If you're thinking about getting chickens on your property, but you live in an area where you might not be able to, might not be allowed to, might be illegal, stick around for this video. I'm going to show you some ways that you could sneak some chickens onto your property. So stick around.
It's a great day to be alive. No sun still shining when I close my eyes. Listen, hard times in the neighborhood, but why can every day be just as good?
Now before I get started, I just want to clarify that I think everybody should be able to own chickens wherever you live. I think it should be written into the Constitution or the Bill of Rights or whatever that everyone is given the right to own chickens in their backyard, because chickens are our freedom, basically. So first of all, chickens are loud. Even if you just have laying hens and you don't have a rooster. I now do have a rooster. I'll get into that in a minute, how I am keeping my rooster quiet. But hens are loud when they lay eggs, and there's no getting around that. So there's some things that I do to make them a little less quiet, or at least to dull the noise. So tip number one for sneaking chickens onto your property is to not get roosters. It's very simple. Get the hens, the egg-laying ones. Those egg layers are going to feed you with eggs. They're also going to give you fertilizer for your gardens and stuff like that. Hens, now, they're still loud. All the noise that you hear behind me are the hens fighting over space in the coop. They're fighting over, we have 2 nesting boxes in there, and they always fight over who gets into, they always seem to want to lay in one of the nesting boxes, and they still get loud and fight over it. If one of the chickens stays in the nesting box too long, they fight and yell and do all those, make all those chicken sounds to try to tell the other one, hey, it's my turn to lay an egg. Get the heck out of the nesting box, it's my turn. So they still lay lots of noise, but if you get roosters, they're going to be making those crows at like 5:30 in the morning, and that is going to upset your neighbors. It might be annoying to you as well. And I actually do have a rooster in this flock right now, and I didn't intend on getting a rooster, but I did another video on the no crow collar, and you could check that out. I'll put a link up to that video. And that's how I have been keeping my rooster very quiet. So I actually hear my hens way more than I hear my rooster. My rooster is actually like on mute. I don't hear it at all, but it's still back there being a rooster, just not making those crows. So there's ways to sneak a rooster in as well. So if they're being loud and they won't shush and be quiet, you could simply ask them, hey, chickens, be quiet, you know? But usually that doesn't work. They just like look at you like you're speaking another language, which I am. So if they're gonna be loud and you're really, really nervous about it, sometimes I just turn on my lawnmower and let it run, and it kind of drowns out the sound of the chickens. Now you can't do that all the time, but if you're home and you hear them and they're being loud and you're worried about your neighbors complaining, turn on the lawnmower, because nobody complains about people running their lawnmowers. Nobody complains when the neighbors' dogs are barking non-stop, which is happening all the time. Dogs can be like super loud and annoying, and everybody has them. And so that's another thing that I do sometimes. I'll turn on the lawnmower, I'll drown out their noise, and hopefully when I'm done using the lawnmower, they'll be quiet. Now the next tip for sneaking chickens onto your property is, maybe this should have been the first tip, it's to ask your neighbors. Say, hey, I'm thinking about getting chickens. What do you think about that? Would you have an issue with me having chickens? And they might say, oh, well, you're not getting a rooster, are you? Because they know that roosters are loud. No, just some egg layers in our backyard. You wouldn't have an issue with that, would you? And now, if your neighbors do have an issue with that, you might want to consider moving. If your neighbors have an issue with you having chickens in your backyard, you have a bigger issue there. And if you're going to get reported for having chickens, it's going to come from your immediate neighbors. So make sure your neighbors are okay with you having chickens. That should probably be number one thing you should do, is check with your neighbors. And if you don't have nice neighbors or cool neighbors, you probably want to leave where you're living anyway and find some good ones. So that should be tip number one. Ask your neighbors. If they don't have a problem with it, nobody's ever going to probably complain about that, you having chickens. So make sure it's all right with your neighbors. Next tip is to simply look at what the laws are in your area. If you're in a borough, a city, out of town, whatever. It seems like the further you are from a city or a town, the more relaxed the area is on you having chickens. When you're in a city or we're in a borough, you're around more people, there's more regulations and stuff like that you have to deal with. So look at your laws and whatever for your area. Now, when we first got chickens, I didn't even look. I just knew I wanted chickens, and I wasn't going to let any law or whatever stop me. I just assumed it was illegal to have chickens in my area. Later on, after having them for like a year or longer, I looked into it, and it turns out we are allowed to have 4 hens in our backyard in this area. I didn't realize that. All right, so here's a very important tip. When having or trying to sneak chickens onto your property, you don't want to broadcast. If you're trying to keep it a secret, you don't want them being super visible to passersby and whatnot. So you want to conceal them in a way so it's not very obvious that you have them. Okay, so here, right now, this is a view that you would get from our driveway if you're walking down our street. I have their coop right here in red, under this little shaded canopy lean-to thing. And over here, this is their run. And I have fence posts here coming along like 8 feet this way and 5 or 6 feet that way. So nobody can see that they're in there. They're fenced in. For one, they're safe from predators this way, so I'm not free-ranging my birds that I'm trying to sneak onto my property. I have them in an enclosed area, an enclosed run, but on a deep bedding system. You could look into all that, how to, properly house them sanitarily. That's not what this video is about. If you were just walking down our street, you wouldn't know what is in here unless you're being nosy and walking onto my property without permission around to the front. You would see the chickens. But from here, from our street view, our driveway view, you would just see a fence. And you might think there's a dog in here. It doesn't matter because it's none of your business, because you shouldn't be on my property looking at what's on my property. But this is how I conceal my chickens to anybody that might have a problem with it. They're fenced in here and they're safe from predators, and anybody that wants to say what I'm doing is illegal. Now here is the front part of the chicken run, and this is something new that I did this year. I actually have used the outer part of the chicken run to trellis my tomatoes. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but now that I see these tomato plants, trellised up here, it's just another thing of privacy, kind of blocking what is behind the tomato plants, and all the leaves are my chickens, but they are actually given some shade. There's actually some shade that they're getting right behind here as well from the tomato plants, which is another plus. But it's just like a privacy fence, a living privacy fence that is also feeding me tomatoes. So this is really cool. So I think I'm going to do this again next year. I'm going to put more tomatoes here. And yeah, so they're blocked from complete, from view from the back, the side, and the front. So the only way that you're really going to know that I have the chickens is if you're being nosy and walking on my property without permission, or if you hear them, which you probably will hear them because my chickens are extremely loud. So that's just how I conceal my chickens on my property, and it's an important thing to do if you're trying to sneak them onto your property and you're in an area where you might not be allowed to have them. Now the last tip is it's something that Justin Rhodes says often, I notice on his channel. It's that he would rather beg for forgiveness than ask for permission to do whatever it is that you're trying to do. So if some code or some kind of officer comes up and says that you're breaking the law or whatever for having these animals in your backyard, simply beg for forgiveness, then ask for permission. Because when you go to ask for permission to have animals, you're going to run into roadblocks. You're going to run into issues, and if you just want to do it, just do it and then deal with whatever happens after. But if you want to have chickens, I wouldn't worry about those kind of things. I would just do it and then beg for forgiveness if trouble comes up, which there shouldn't be because they're chickens, and everybody's allowed to have dogs, and dogs actually kill people. Chickens just lay eggs and like make perfect compost for you to use in your garden. So I don't really understand why chickens are illegal unless, you know, your local governments and stuff just don't want us being self-sufficient and independent, and they want us like dependent on them for everything. I don't know, sounds like a conspiracy, but you be the judge on that. I think everybody should be allowed to have chickens. So there you go. That's going to wrap up this video on, I think I gave you 5 ways that you could sneak chickens onto your property. And if you're watching this and you're thinking about doing it, I wish you luck. Good luck with it, and you'll be very happy that you did. I guarantee it. I love having chickens in my backyard. I wish I'd done it years earlier, but I'm very happy to have them. So there you go. That's going to wrap up this video. Thanks for watching. Give it a like, thumbs up if you found it helpful. Subscribe to our channel if you're new here. I would really appreciate it for more videos like this on chickens, homesteading, gardening, all that stuff. I'd really appreciate it if you subscribed. Thank you very much if you have. That's going to wrap up this video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.